Hi everyone, this is a full Auto Plus run on Llyud's Lost Chapters, Wings Graven with Emotion. As with all Auto Plus runs, the setup is quite key, so I spent about a minute at the start here showing the setup of my entire party, and as always I will also be including this in the video description as well, so do check it out. The one thing I would change on Gau here on hindsight is that I think equipping his Lifeshaver skill is actually probably better. I actually unequipped both his Lifeshaver S1 skill as well as his EX, as you can see here. Gau is used here mainly for party sustain because his counter landslide heals the entire party. Even with that, I did come close to failing the HP requirement, which is 15,000 on this stage. So if you want a more consistent run, you could consider equipping Gau's Lifeshaver skill because that skill heals your party. Anyway, with that I just hit Auto Plus and begin the battle. Coming into the battle, the video is sped up 1.4 times. In case you are wondering, the run itself in real time took me roughly 14 minutes to complete. But as long as you set up correctly, you should be able to fairly consistently defeat this stage with this party setup. Anyway, as the party is going through the motion, just a little bit about the stage mechanics and why this party does so well. First off, this fight is actually pretty straightforward because the bosses really only have 3 regular attacks in their roster, not counting their trigger attacks. The first attack is just a generic HP attack when they accumulate enough Brave, so you should never see that attack in this sort of party setup because you will consistently counter the boss and keep them broken. The second attack is Helm Splitter, which is a single target Brave attack only. It does inflict 1 stack of their signature debuff, Curse Eye, and I'll cover that a bit more later. And that attack also buffs themselves with attack up buff, but it's actually, in other words, just more or less a single target Brave attack. The third attack is their signature attack, which is Felfey Eye, and when they hit 20% force gauge or higher, that attack becomes Felfey Eye plus. Both attacks are actually identical in terms of damage. The only difference is that the plus version also delays your entire party by 1 turn. On top of that, Felfey Eye also inflicts their signature debuff, Curse Eye. Coming into the Curse Eye, which is more or less the bulk of the fight here because the other mechanics are pretty uninteresting. Curse Eye is a 5 stacks maximum debuff, and you can see it being applied here actually. At 1 to 3 stacks, it's pretty non-threatening. All it does is gives you Brave Poison and reduces the Brave damage that you can do and Brave damage that you receive by 10%, which is pretty much doesn't really change anything. At 4 stacks, it also gives you a speed minus 30% debuff, which is actually nice for this party because you actually want to take as few turns as possible, so speed down is actually beneficial. At 5 stacks though, you also get an HP poison that is equivalent to 30% of the boss's attack stat, and this is roughly 8 to 9,000 HP damage a turn that you take, so that really hurts a lot, and that's why Gau is important here. With this party setup, I am actually making full use of their Curse Eye debuff because at 89% and 49% and I believe 19% health, they will use Felfey Eye plus, and that actually automatically inflicts 5 stacks of their debuff on your entire party immediately. And this is actually why I use Auron instead of Gladiolus. Like I said, you actually want to be debuffed by Curse Eye because it gives you a minus 30% speed. I didn't use Gladiolus here because it's actually immune to debuffs. That being said, it's not really a game breaker, it just makes the run a little bit more optimal. So if you don't have Auron, you can actually replace him with Gladiolus as well, and it should still work. This brings me to Gau. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, Gau is the sustain of the party. He's one of the very few characters who can actually provide you often heals. So he'll be healing everyone with counter landslide every turn. As mentioned before, if you are worried about the health of your party because you do take quite a lot of damage from the HP poison, you can consider to equip Gau's Lifeshaver skill. I did remove it for this fight because the Cat Scratch counter actually does a little bit more damage than Lifeshaver. But that being said, overall on hindsight, I do think that Lifeshaver, if equipped, will provide you a more consistent run. Coming to Cor, Cor provides Auron, who's the cover tank and damage mitigator in the party, with the Absolute Oath buff, which actually boosts Auron's defense further and also makes it so that both Cor and Auron cannot be broken. In an Auto Plus run, it's important to put Auron on party slot number 1 because Cor will always target party slot number 1 when he applies his Absolute Oath buff. Essentially right here, as you can see, I've entered into Force Time, and with Auto Plus, you should consistently hit Force Time before the bosses. You do want to have somewhat decent Force levels invested in your party. You don't need everyone at Force level 30. I think the best is, of course, obviously having Cor at Force level 30 helps. And for Gau and Auron, I think a minimum level of Force level 10 should help. Though you do want enough, because if you don't have enough Force levels, you run the risk of the bosses entering Force Time before you, and you really don't want that to happen. Another thing that helps a lot is that when the bosses get enough Force gauge, they also get a turn rate up boost on themselves, which makes their turn more frequent. So those turn rate up buff coupled with the speed down debuff on your party is the reason why the bosses actually get a lot of turns in relation to your party members' turns, which again is really what you want to do. Not only that, as I mentioned earlier, Felfey Eye Plus delays your entire party by 1 turn, so that helps to even further reduce the number of turns that your party member take. So with this, you should be able to comfortably clear the fight within 1 Force Time by Cor. In terms of alternatives, if you don't have Cor with his FR, Reno with his FR should work decently well as well. If you don't have Auron, like I said, Gladio is an okay alternative. Gladio will do more damage on turn, especially since Gladio can equip his EX, but because Gladio is immune to debuffs, he won't be inflicted by the 30% speed down. Lastly, if you don't have Gau, you would probably benefit from another party member who can consistently keep your party topped up in health, and preferably you want someone slow for that. Gau is really sort of the best of both worlds because he keeps your party healthy and he also contributes to Cor's FR because he counters twice per enemy attack. Each counter will plus 5% the force bonus as such. The only other thing that I should mention is that in an Auto Plus run, you are somewhat on a timer, and that's because your entire party will be using their LDs right at the start of the fight due to the AI. So what this means is that you need to complete the fight before Gau and Auron's LD buff wears off. Gau really only has 9 turns of his LD buff, and since his LD is instant turn, he will spam and use up all his LD right at the start of the fight, which means that after his LD barrage has ended, you only have 9 Gau turns before he loses his counter landslide. And in case you're wondering why I removed Gau's EX actually will remove his counter stance, in this case his counter Cat Scratch stance, and if it's removed, you will actually not be able to use counter Cat Scratch whenever the bosses attack until Gau gets another turn to reuse his Cat Scratch skill. My party is fairly well equipped. Both Gau and Cor has 5/5 ultimate weapons, and Auron himself has a 3/5 ultimate weapon greatsword. Anyway, with that said, I'm very near to the end of the battle, so kick back and enjoy the rest of the fight.
責務は果たす。想定済みだ。想定済みだ。